Hello, welcome back. We had a day off, but now we're back, and it's time to do some work. This is a game master, a dungeon master workday, game master preparation, and we're dealing with building monsters. That's right. For those of you who wanted monsters, we're back to it again, but something a little bit special today. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to present my normal slideshow. There may be some slight adjustments as I normally do, but at the end of that, we're going to rebuild the stat block for the adult red dragon for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. You requested it, you get it, we'll go through and rebuild it so that it will actually do what you need it to do. I've put up a poll, feel free to take part in that poll, grab some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable. The presentation is probably about 20 minutes, maybe a little bit less, we'll see how we go. And then I'll go in and I'll show you how to adjust the mathematics and mechanics for that adult red dragon. Okay, I've picked the red dragon because I think you're probably more likely to use that than anything else, and it's a good example of what you need to sort of deal with. Anyway, now that I've said all that, let's get straight into this, shall we? Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games. Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, doesn't matter what it is really. No, what we're dealing with here is building monsters, making creatures, dealing with the stuff of legend, and also the stuff of, like, how do you actually make that happen for a game master? So this is game master preparation. This is lesson 2. What am I saying here? This is not supposed to be building non-player characters. Have I managed to make a mistake and actually not grab the right one? I apologize, people. I thought I had everything lined up and ready to go, and clearly I haven't. Just give me a second and I'll see if I can realign this to where it should be, which is, I think, there. And if I go, whoopsie daisies. I did check it, but obviously my brain was turned off because I didn't have the right one. Okay, let's try this. We're not doing non-player characters. That was last week. We're doing monsters. Whew, talk about dodging that bullet. Okay, so for those of you who wanted to know how to actually build monsters, this is lesson 3, not lesson 2. The overview for today. Monster stat block builders. I'm going to go over some that you can use for creating monsters for various game systems. Inspiration for your monster creation, how to go about doing that. The monster building process, of course, because you need to have that as well. The monster story questions you need to ask to build the fluff and the lore for your monster. We're going to look at monster design and creation, and that's more around sort of, I guess, the mathematical aspect, the more mechanical, the more combat-orientated stuff, and of course, miscellaneous recommendations. I'm going to explain how to build monsters conceptually and the stat block for a role-playing game. I'm going to describe how to build a monster conceptually, and I'm going to demonstrate that process conceptually in the stat block. We've done a lot of conceptual stuff in the past. I'm going to focus a lot more today on the stat block and the maths. I'm going to allow practice example here, so I'm hoping that you will put in your 2 cents. There's no guarantee that I will listen to everything, but certainly by all means put in your 2 cents and see what happens. Okay, monster stat block builders. There's a bunch of them that you can use. The first one is Pathfinder 2nd edition. So the PF2E monster tool, okay, it's designed for Pathfinder 2nd edition. That particular tool, PF2E monster tool, will allow you to get your monsters built for Pathfinder. The Call of Cthulhu creature generator, another pretty good tool if you're playing sort of horror themed stuff and investigation, Call of Cthulhu. If you're playing Starfinder, there's actually the Starfinder monster builder, so you can go and use that. If you're playing D&D 5e, there is the D&D 5e stat block builder. Okay, there's also Gift Glyphs, Monster Maker, the Monster Shuffler, and you can also go and make using ChatGPT, which has now been upgraded to version 4, which is a little bit better than version 3.5. You can make stat blocks for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. You may be able to make stat blocks for some other systems, but I don't know how good it is at doing that. So if you're trying to make it for version 4 or for version 3.5, version 3.5 or for basic D&D, I don't know how good it is. You'll have to test it out and see for yourself, okay? That would be my advice. Okay, so Inspiration. Where do you get the inspiration for making your monsters? Brainstorming. Brainstorming on a page of paper, one piece of paper, brainstorm, pen, pencil, doesn't matter. Write down some words, draw a little sketch in the middle there, and just link it all up, okay? This just gets your mind thinking about what sort of monster you want. The picture does not need to be that great, okay? It's just a little picture, just to give you an idea of what sort of creature you're trying to come up with. Does it have tentacles? Does it have more than one leg? Does it have a big mouth? Whatever it is. Books, movies, video games, music, all are really good places to get ideas for creating and making your monster for your game. You can also use things like Google Search or Pinterest Art or the ArtStation website or the DeviantArt website, where people have a lot of fantasy artwork up there that you could use. And you know, I'm not saying take their artwork. I'm saying use that as a jumping off point for the idea for your monster or creature. You can also combine real world animals and fantasy monsters together to make your new monster. We do this quite a lot on my channel, where we actually make monsters from sort of scratch, essentially doing the physical aspect of it, then the lore, and then a very rough stat block. But that'll come back in a couple of weeks. So next we have random generated charts and tables. They give you different aspects of the monster. Now, I've constructed a whole bunch of these sorts of tables. You probably will find that other designers may have something like this, but you can have a variety of different tables that build the different aspects of your monster, which I'm going to go over what they look like in a second. All right, now that we've covered the getting your ideas sorted out, let's deal with the monster building process. Creating a monster concept. Now, I've already explained the possibility of doing that with just a piece of paper, drawing a small picture, and then doing some brainstorming about sort of what it looks like and what sort of things it might be able to do. That's your conceptual stuff. Then designing the monster's appearance, okay? Now, you will eventually, at some point, you need to have an image. You need to draw the picture. You need to you could get your children to draw the monster for you. You can use software. You can use Mid-Journey artificial intelligence, Starry AI. Stable Diffusion is probably better, but there are other ones out there that are pretty good. Hot Pot AI. There's lots of different, AI software that will generate the monster for you, not for publication, but for your own purposes. You can also draw it by hand if you think your drawing skill is going to be good enough. Okay, that's also a possibility. Develop some special abilities for your monster, things that it will do that make it stand out from every other monster that you might ever come across. Then you're going to give the monster a name that matches the monster concept, okay? You're going to make up a story for your monster, give it a history if it needs to have a history, give it some ecology information, its habitat, deal with its combat tactics when it gets into a fight, if it does actually fight at all, give it some motives, okay, whether that's individual or globally. Make sure it has some lore around it so that you've got a story to build from, okay? It's much easier to do the mathematics of a monster if you have a basic idea of what it looks like and the story behind the monster. If you have the lore and the story behind the monster, the mathematics flows very easily. If you don't have that, you're going to make a bit of a mess, okay? Build your monster stat block and do all the mathematics at this point. This is the last thing you should be doing. Don't do that first. Don't chase that mathematical unicorn, okay? The uncatchable creature. It is not a catchable thing. You can't make the perfect monster stat block. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be good enough. Otherwise, you will never finish it. Okay, all right. Now we need to get into the story aspect of things. Thankfully, I have a friend called AJ Pickett who assisted me with this process. And so this is very much taken from the mind of AJ Pickett and myself, and actually William, who I won't mention other than he is a friend. So, the monster story. What do we need to actually have, and what questions do we need to answer? Where does the monster normally live? In its normal environment, okay, where does it normally live? Does it live underwater? Okay, does it live on land? Does it live underground? You decide. Why is the monster in its current location for this adventure? Is for adventure design, not for necessarily the monster overall design. But if you're having to apply your monster to an adventure and it's not in its normal environment, the place it would normally live, and it's somewhere else. You have to figure out why it's no longer there and it's moved somewhere else. What does the monster want? Monsters have a motivation. Or what does the monster want from the characters? We don't need to worry too much about what the monster wants from the world, but that's the first question. But you do have to break it down. You do need to answer, what does the monster want from the characters? Okay. What makes the monster unique? What makes it stand out and unique from every other monster that you've ever come across? What makes the monster scary if it is meant to be scary? Not all monsters or creatures are supposed to be scary. If it is scary, what actually makes that scary? And you can possibly combine different ideas and abilities to get there, okay? What does it feed on? What does it eat? What sort of diet does it have? Okay, determine that. How does it survive? There must be some things that it does that help it survive in the environment it lives in. What is the monster's territorial range? Basically, how far does it roam from its den, its lair, its home? Okay. How does the monster sense creatures or prey in the environment? If it feeds on meat and creatures of some kind, how does it actually find them? Does it use its eyes, its ears, its nose? Is it feeling the ground and using tremor sense of some kind? What does the monster ignore? What does it consider no longer of interest to it or not a threat? There will be things that monsters ignore. How does the monster communicate? Does it use clicks? Does it speak? Does it use odor? Does it use scent? Does it use body language? How does the monster reproduce? In other words, how does it make more monsters, baby monsters? Okay, how does it produce offspring? How does it change the environment? Because all creatures, whether they're real animals or beasts and creatures, a monster will change the environment or have an effect on the place that it lives in, specifically where it is right now. What sort of effect does it have on the environment? These are all the sorts of questions you want to consider when you're building your monster and doing the story for the monster. Okay. Monster design and creation. This is where we start getting in more into the weeds of things that it can do. So before you start dealing with the mathematics of your monster and your creature, there are some things you need to determine. We will get into the mathematics of it shortly. But first off, you have to decide how difficult you want your monster to be in battle. If it's a combat monster, how difficult do you want it to be for the players playing in the adventure to deal with? So is it going to be easy, medium, hard, or very hard? Then you need to decide on what sort of role the monster has in a battle or a combat that the players will have with it, should that happen. Is it a solo monster? Does it fight alone? Is it a leader that leads other monsters or other creatures? Is it a soldier who fights up in the front line? Is it an artillery unit that fires from a distance and stands at the back? Is it a controller that changes the environment, okay, makes it harder to actually negotiate the battlefield? Does it cast spells, the controller? Or is it a skirmisher? Does it jump in and out of battle constantly, making it hard to pin down? Select the ability or attribute scores for the monster that makes sense. Okay, decide on what sort of things it should have. Now, if you're dealing with Dungeons and Dragons, okay, you're dealing with things like strength, dexterity, constitution, okay, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Decide what attribute or ability scores are appropriate for your monster. And really, sometimes that just comes down to, is it going to be a high score or a high value or a low value? How long does the monster need to survive, and how much health do you need to give it? Remember, how long it survives in a battle is really just a timer. So you have to figure out how many hit points or health points or wounds it can take before it's no longer able to continue to fight, and it either is going to die, okay, or it's going to run away. Okay, so a couple of different ways. Or potentially surrender. Assign monster features or traits that always are in effect. These are things like, if it can fly, then it can always fly. If it swims, then it always swims. Okay, these are things that are always in effect. Okay, features and traits like that. Next, you're going to create your special powers or abilities for the monster. This is where the monster has to consciously decide to do something. It's not like the monster feature or trait where it doesn't have to think about it, it does it automatically. No, this is where it actually has to consciously make a decision to do something to affect the players who are fighting it. What sort of attacks does the monster make with the mechanics of your game? Is it going to be just bite, claw, and tail attack? Or a tentacle attack? You decide. Figure out what it is. There might be more to it. Build the monster special abilities and attacks. Now, there is guidance for D&D 5e in the Dungeon Master Guide on how to do this. I don't know that it's the best guidance I've seen, but you could certainly use some of that information if you're dealing with D&D 5e, that is. Make the mathematical adjustments to your stat block. So what I mean is when you're building your mathematics for your monster, and you've got your basic gist, this is where you start putting in your numbers and making adjustments and moving things around. You can consult, and if you're doing this through D&D 5e, then the Dungeon Master Guide has a page. 274 is not up to date, I would say. It probably needs to be updated. It's probably a little bit out of date. It's probably not completely correct, but it's closer than everything else that I've seen that Wizards of the Coast has been putting out recently. So this is like the quick monster stat block table. Okay, I recommend consulting it, but you also need to consider particularly your system. Like your system, there should be some sort of guidance or table that gives you an idea of what the maths will be. The maths is the only thing you really have a lot of control over. A lot of the other things that you give to a monster, like special abilities, immunities, resistances, all that sort of stuff that is sort of more nebulous, they are harder to control and determine the outcome on the player characters who are in the fight. So think in terms of the mathematics and the numbers. That's the only part that you can really sort of lock down into a table of some kind. Check your monster stat block and the mathematics and the difficulty. Is it fitting in line with the difficulty that you wanted? And for those of you who are wondering how this all works, I always recommend that if you're dealing with whether it's monster level or creature level or difficulty level or whatever system you're using or challenge rating, do that last. Do all your checks for that last. And also, I want to make it clear, older versions of Dungeons & Dragons, if you're dealing with Dungeons & Dragons, and even many different tabletop role-playing games, did not have a specialized challenge rating or difficulty level for monsters. This is a new thing that's come forward where people have said, I want to be able to have a formula that tells me exactly what is going to work for the number of people playing at my table with the level of their character. It is unfortunately, it is quite ridiculous to expect the outcome to be the same for everybody, because it never will be. So mathematics can only get you so far. Making a monster stat block is not necessarily perfect mathematics. It's very, very loosey-goosey. Okay, but you can use things like the 5e Tools CR calculator. There's a website called 5e Tools that will allow you to do some of the checking, but it won't cover everything. And again, even if you do that, it's still going to be pretty loosey-goosey. All right, let's go into some miscellaneous recommendations, and that will round us out, and then we can go on to actually doing some stat block adjustment. We rebuild a monster. So miscellaneous recommendations. My recommendations to you are based on the fact that I've made a lot of monsters for D&D 5e. I have not made a lot of monsters for 3.5, but I have for 4e as well. I was part of the alpha and beta test for D&D Next. I'm fairly familiar with the monster stat stuff for 5e. So this is what I would say to you. The monster will always feel unfinished, no matter what you do, whether it's the lore, okay, whether it's the drawing an image, whether it's the mathematics, okay, the stat block, it will always feel unfinished. Don't let that perfectionist in you stop you completing the monster. Sometimes what you've got is good enough, okay? Unless you're publishing, it really doesn't matter that much. It's easy to get fixated on the stat block building, that particular aspect of the monster. But frankly, even though it takes a lot of time to create a stat block depending on the system you're using, it's really not the most important aspect. You'll find that it's better to focus on the narrative. The narrative of your monster is more important than the stat block. So please don't get fixated when you're creating your own monsters on the stat block only. We do this because we assume, well, this is the most essential stuff we need, because they're going to have to, if we want them to fight it, or they're going to fight the monster, we have to have the maths. We have to have the maths. But it's really not as important as the narrative behind the monster, because they may not ever fight the monster. What happens if they find an alternative that doesn't involve sticking their sword in the monster or blowing it up with magic? They might well do so. Okay? Avoid judging the value and quality of your monster. I think quite often people, when they're making their own stuff, they get caught up to, what I'm doing is not good enough. It's not as good as what Kobold Press put out, or what MCDM puts out, or what Wizards of the Coast is making, or what Paizo makes. Stop comparing yourself to them, or Colosseum. Don't compare yourself to publishers. Okay? Most of the time, you're only making it for yourself anyway, so you do not have to get too tied up in that. And I can guarantee you, plenty of publishers made some shitty monsters over the years. They really have. Okay, you're not publishing, you're not selling to the open market, so it's not as important as you might think. Okay, that's my advice to you. I'm hoping this was useful to you. Thank you for watching and listening. I really appreciate all of my subscribers who have been following me. I want to thank all of my patrons who make it possible for me to keep running this program. And of course, I really want to thank you again for your time. So, all the best with your monster creation. Until next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, all right, so I'm going to get started in a second on showing you how to deal with a monster stat block. I don't often do this that much. I did a lot of it in the past, and I put it aside for a while. And so today I'm going to do my very best, if I can, to show you how to adjust a dragon. And I've decided that an adult dragon is probably more interesting and useful to you. I had put up a poll saying, like, would you like me to do the Lich, or would you like me to do the Blink Dog, or the adult dragon, or do you want me to do something like the Owlbear? Because the Owlbear stat block is kind of poo. And the going thing is, people want me to go over the adult dragon. Now, I've run many adult dragons. I've run quite a few dragons, full stop. Right through from the Wormling, right through to the Ancient Dragon, okay? But here's the thing. Here's the thing with dragons. Dragons generally wind up fighting alone. And notoriously, all dragons that fight alone, all creatures and monsters that have to fight alone against a group of individuals, will always get their asses handed to them, okay? But that's not what we're going to deal with today. Today we're going to deal with the dragon. And because the dragon is probably going to be faced as a solo monster, and yes, you can use minions, okay, but the problem is one area effect spell will wipe out all the minions. And players will ignore the minions unless the minions are doing a lot of damage. They will simply just target the dragon. So you can include little drakes and other creatures that are all kobolds that are fighting with the adult red dragon. That's fine. Go for it. Do that. Tie them up as much as you like. But I guarantee you, if they can figure out how to get to the dragon, that's what they're going for. It's like having a spellcaster who has lieutenants and minions, okay? Undead, a necromancer. That spellcaster is the only thing they care about, is destroying that first. And the dragon is like that too. It's like a magnet. So because it's a magnet, we have to figure out how to make it interesting. If we can't make it, if we can't make it so, we don't want to make it so bad that it's going to wipe them out every single time. Unless, of course, you're kind of sadistic. But we want to make it interesting and exciting, and we want to give the dragon the opportunity to escape and come back and screw with the players' lives sometime later on. So this is the sort of thing we need to consider. So I'm going to show you the stat block that I've started to work on. I had started to put together sort of the rough guts, and I'll make it clear I haven't made any major adjustments because I want you to be able to see the adjustments as I go. Okay, so this is the stat block. It's in a Google Doc. Okay, and I've sort of dropped in anything you see in yellow means I have plans. Okay, so I've dropped in some stuff here. We've got all the basic mechanics behind it, and we have to be able to build it. Now, I'm not too worried about lair actions. I'm not too worried about regional effects. Okay, what we need to deal with is mostly the monster stat block for the dragon. That's what we're going to focus on. So I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to go and use the toilet, come back, and then I'm going to show you how to deal with the dragon and actually make it a significant threat. I have figured it out. It's taken me a long time because I used to run all these dragons as written, and as written, they're not great. Okay, so there definitely needs to be some adjustment made. Hi Derp, how are you? I'm undecided. I've run the 5e adult red dragon before and didn't see any big problem, but I suppose it could be better. Okay. Learning concepts and listening. Okay. Hello Nacho Man. Thank you for being here, Derp and Fred Huber, both patrons, and so is Nacho Man. Hello Jean, how are you? Non-fantastic creatures are something I need to work on. Well, this is what we're going to do today. I'm going to go through your chat very quickly, and then we're going to get you to... I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to take my break, come back, and then we're going to get into it, okay? We just need to rate creatures by hit points, and yeah. Yes, that's true. In the older days, they just rated a monster's difficulty was just how many hit dice it had. You're quite right. That was the way. And it was just about how long it would stay in the fight, and how many hit points it would essentially have. You know, total number of hit dice for your monster determined sort of how hard it would likely be, because that was the only real mathematical aspect you had any real control over. This is why I was saying before, every time you look at maths, look at the numerical stuff. It's really the only thing you can control to make balanced. Everything else is going to unbalance it. So as soon as you make a monster fly, you can't factor that in. It just doesn't happen. Unless, of course, you're stupid and you have a flying monster and you don't put the monster in the air. Okay. Unless they're the same reason. And yes. Dolphin is a shitty monster too. It is, because it shouldn't be a monster. Dolphins should not be a monster that you have to fight. And putting it in a monster stat block is kind of stupid. Yeah. Here we go. So I'm going to ask you the question. What do you think needs fixing on the dragon, the adult red dragon? Hashtag. What do you think needs fixing on the adult red dragon for D&D 5e? Okay, there we go. This is what we're dealing with. I'm going to ask you that question. The poll will keep running. I'm going to go and take a quick break, literally just to use the toilet, and then I'm going to get into it. I'll make it clear right now, people. I'm going to do stuff you were probably not expecting, and it's going to be a lot of changes. So if you feel that the dragon is fine the way it is, then none of this is going to be of use to you. But my group, full of very, very capable individuals, played the game a long time. If I don't make changes, the dragon is toast. Toast. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, stepping back in, on my way, almost here. Let's get the hat. Do I need the hat? Yeah, it's a little bit cold today. Okay, right, I'm back. Now I will keep an eye on track. I'm not going to respond to every comment you have to say, and because I find that this actually sometimes it actually works against the live stream to follow up on everything that people have to say. Particularly sometimes some of the stuff is being said, it's not hugely useful. So do not feel bad if I do not respond to everything. Okay, I've still got to get the job done in the time frame we have. We have about an hour and a half to get it done. That's what I'm going to give myself. So to do that, that means focusing on the task at hand. Okay. So do not feel bad if I have missed something. If you want it to stand out, then make sure it's very clear and short. So I can actually pull it out if there's something I have missed. Now, somebody's going to say something about spell casting for dragons. And yes, I am aware that dragons probably should cast spells. But we also need to make the stat block in such a way that a dungeon master can actually run it without going insane. Okay, so that's another thing to consider. It's not just, oh, it would be great if we could do this. So Fred Huber said flyby with breath weapon. You don't need to have a flyby with a breath weapon because you don't need to get that close. The problem is flyby and using claws and teeth if that's what you're trying to do as a strategy, where people can use things like attacks of opportunity and you wind up with people having sentinel and they can lock down or take the monster to the ground when it really doesn't make any sodding sense. Okay, so I get where you're coming from there in terms of flyby as a feature. Should it have a flyby feature? Realistically, it shouldn't be possible for a player to be able to stop a creature of this size. It is huge. And if Sentinel works on them, there's something wrong with Sentinel, as we know. There is something wrong with Sentinel. It's too good. It's quite a ridiculous feature. And it shouldn't be able to apply to a creature of that size. It should have a size limit of some kind. So I get it. I do understand where you're coming from there. So maybe flyby is something to consider. And then somebody had said something about spell casting. I'm not going to go too much into spell casting. What I'm going to do is get rid of my hat, and I'm going to show you what I would do with the dragon. Okay, and you'll tell me what you think. And if you disagree, you disagree, and if you like it, you like it. Let's start from the beginning. Dragon. The adult red dragon. Now, as I said before, you can't rely on minions. It's probably going to be faced as a solo creature. You can pair it with something else for sure, but will that solve your problems? Probably not. We don't have to worry about changing the name of it, so I'll just unyellow this. So let's get rid of that. Its armor class. We need to determine whether it's armor class. We're not going to change the challenge rating. We'll just leave that number the same. We'll just make that in line with. What's the challenge rating for this creature? The first thing to consider. It's a 17. We leave that alone. That means that a character of about level 15, 16 or 17 is probably going to be capable of facing this, or should be. So this should be a tough fight for a character who is level 15, 16 or 17. And then of course going up, it's going to be easier and easier beyond level 17. There's a lot of things to consider when you're dealing with a problem like that. There are a huge number of things like how good are its stats? Its stats are fine. We don't need to really change its strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. They've got plenty of good high numbers in here. That's not an issue, okay? Is its proficiency bonus? Is its proficiency bonus where it needs to be? In other words, if we look at the proficiency bonus of a level 17 character, do they get a +6? And if you look at the Dungeon Master Guide on page 274, it says proficiency bonus should be a +6 for a challenge rating 17 creature. Is that in line with the plays? Because if it weren't, you have a problem almost immediately. So you can look at the challenge rating, the proficiency bonus for a character are all the same, and it is. It goes at level 17, we go to a 6. So that's fine. That part of the table is all good. So we don't need to worry about that. We can put that off our list. Next, armor class is another huge factor. But we're dealing with a dragon covered in armor and shielding. It's got scales on it, okay? So here we go. So we go 17, and we should have an armor class of 19. This has got a 19 armor class. Now we could go 1 bar higher if we wanted to, or we could go 1 bar lower if we wanted to. I would suggest to you, let's undo that. 19 is fine, but if we want to make it a little bit more difficult, we can go a little bit higher. Now, let's think about its armor class and how often it's going to get hit. If your players are level 17, and they're probably at this point, they have at least in their main attack a +5 modifier. Then we add that to their proficiency bonus, which is a +6. So 5 and 6 is 11. Okay, that means that when they roll their 20-sided dice, they're going to be adding an 11 to their 20-sided dice. That means they're adding anything from a 9 upward will hit the target. Is it a 9? No, it's an 8. So they got a better than 50% chance of hitting the target. And that's a dragon. I would suggest to you that may be part of our problem there. I want you to think about how many characters at level 17, if you've ever played to level 17, which I have game mastered to 17 and played to 16 a few times, how many actually have an armor class, a player has an armor class of 20 or more? It's quite common actually, particularly the marshals. So we could push this a little bit higher and we'd be fine. Even though 19 is by the table where we would be at. That would only make it slightly better than it was before. If we move it any higher than 20, we're now outside of the range of a challenge rating 17. Okay? And now we're changing the difficulty of that monster by a lot. So I'd push the armor class up a little bit. That means that now our players, when they roll their 11 to hit, and that's not even counting advantage as a benefit. Okay, they're going to have the 11, they add their dice roll, which is going to wind up having to be a 9 or higher. So they've got slightly better than 50% chance of still hitting the dragon when they get a chance to do so, even though it shouldn't be getting hit that much because it should be flying. You're going to have to use ranged attacks. By the way, I can fix the stat block, but if you have really poor tactics for your dragon, I can't solve that problem for you. Don't put your dragon on the ground. Okay, and don't stick your dragon in a vulnerable position. If you're not leading with your breath weapon, you're doing something wrong. Okay, so those are the basics to running a dragon. Never should be on the ground, always flying. Lead with the breath weapon. Okay. All right, monster hit points. It says 256. That's the average, and there's a formula there saying 19d12 plus 133. Now here's the problem. A character at level 17 who is a rogue could pump out with a critical hit, in some cases not even a critical hit, but a rogue could do about 100 points of damage with their sneak attack at level 17. Quite easily. Not that hard to do at all. Probably going to be a bit more. A paladin can rock out quite a bit of damage too at that level, but rogues can do a lot. Most wizards, okay, and spellcasters are going to be pumping out at least 60 points of damage with the right type of spell at that level, easily. It won't be that hard. Okay, so, and in fact, they could drop something like, a meteorite storm. Even though the fire damage might do very little, the bludgeoning damage will certainly mess it up a lot. Okay, so I would suggest to you that those hit points mean that roughly this creature, after it's been hit by the rogue and then hit by the wizard, has probably got about 100 hit points left, okay, in the first round. And that's not even considering it's on the ground, because the rogue can just shoot an arrow. It doesn't have to necessarily be, as long as you've got advantage, you're going to get your sneak attack. So that means that the fighter and any other character, the paladin, what else can they do? At level 17, this thing is dead by the end of round 1. That's an adult red dragon. Dead in 1 round, more than likely. Provided they didn't miss. And the chances are 50-50 chance they haven't. Maybe you'll get to round 1.5 and your dragon is dead. So 256 hit points at level 17 is not going to work. Okay, let's have a look and see what you guys are saying here. I get fighters to 18 or 19 AC at level... Yes, exactly. It is very easy to get their armor class a lot longer, higher than that. Very, very simple. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do what I normally do here with hit points, is I'm going to determine it off the table on this chart, and then I'm going to tell you what I would normally do. Okay, so the table says here that the number of hit points that a challenge rating 17 monster should have is 311 to 325. Now, the average is the average. So what is the maximum hit points we can push this thing to? I would say right now that we are short by quite a few hit points. At least by this table, we're short by something in the vicinity of 60 hit points. It probably should have 60 more hit points. 60 more hit points is just another spell from a wizard or a sorcerer, okay? That'll hit it at level 17 and before it's dead. Okay, so that's all it's going to solve it. It doesn't even get us through a second round. So that it's going to be dead very fast. So how do we fix a problem like that? My advice to you is with a calculator, and I'm just going to get rid of this for a second if I can. Sorry, people. I'm just going to expand, minimize. Yeah, it's not going to do that. Okay, if I just go back. And calculator, where's my calculator? Dun, 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 on my phone. I'm doing this on my phone, sorry. So, 19 multiplied by 12 is going to gives us a number, and that number is 228, nowhere near enough. If I add 133 plus 133, so that's 361 hit points. So 361 hit points. I don't really want my fight to be any longer than roughly, I would say, 3 rounds. 3 rounds of combat and then we finished is fine with me. So will that get us 3 rounds of combat? Probably not. I think what we will wind up with is roughly in the vicinity of something like, I don't know, probably about 1.5 rounds, maybe 2 rounds if we're lucky and somebody misses or isn't paying attention. If we can eliminate the melee characters from the equation, then we might get to the second round. So we're looking at probably 1.5 to 2 rounds of a fight, and it's all over. So we have to actually get it done in a fairly quick space of time. So this is what we're going to do here. 361. You go max. 256 that's the average. Okay, average. So we'll mark that on our sheet so we know what it is. And I will unhighlight that. Okay, and I'm just going to put a dash. Okay, so this is what we want to aim for. 361 hit points. That's what you want to aim for, somewhere in that range. I don't worry about the speed on the ground or the climbing speed or the flying speed. Those are all fine. We'll just leave them alone. Okay, saving throws. Saving throws, again, you know, they're based off what we think is going to work off their ability scores, and the dexterity one is really just, it's proficient in it, so we get a plus 6. The con one, okay, we're adding plus 6 again because it's got a con modifier of 7. That's all cool. Wisdom is, you know, also apparently got proficiency in that save as well because it's got a plus 1 for the wisdom modifier, so we're adding 6 to that. And the charisma is also getting a bonus as well. So it's got a lot of saving throws it can make. So its weakest saving throw is a strength saving throw and the intelligence saving throw. So we need to have some weaknesses in a monster, so we're going to keep them. And let's move down. Perception. Okay, so wisdom. We've obviously got some benefits for our perceptions because we've got a plus 13. Again, I don't think that's too much to worry about. let's put that aside. The stealth, again, I'd put that aside. Don't worry too much about that. Great, it's got some stealth, it's got some perception. Fire immunity, it's a red dragon. It should be immune to fire. Okay, so that's fine. Should we have damage resistances? Now, the thing with damage resistances is, that would certainly slow down some of the damage you can do to it if we were to do this with, say, bludgeoning or slashing or piercing damage, because it's armored. But we've already really kind of done this with the armor class being 20. Our timer is about 1.5 to 2 rounds, and then the battle is over. That's what we're going to deal with. All we have to do is make sure our dragon can do enough in that time frame. Hello, Oscar. How are you? AC 25, hit points 150 equals to hits a plus 15, and you have a respectable dragon. It's not about avoiding them hitting the target. Missing the target is not the problem. It's about timing it. It really is. It's about timing it. I wouldn't worry about it. Okay? I really wouldn't worry about it. Here we go. You want to go wisdom? You want to go wisdom higher? Well, if we don't want to go wisdom higher, fine. Is it really going to matter that much? It's a red dragon. It's got different things going on here. If you want to push it up, let's push it up. It isn't really going to have a huge effect. Okay, there you go. We pushed it up a bit, and then it means that this goes up to 8. There you go. There. All right, wisdom done, and of course its thing will go up to a 40 by 1. Okay, moving along. Blind sight 60 feet. Fine with that. Dark vision 120 feet. Fine with that. Passive perception, we know what our passive perception should be. Should now be a 24. Fine with that. I've put in here and highlighted true sight. Why have I done that? Because it's a sighting dragon. If anybody who played older versions of the game, you know that true sight was a thing. Monsters had this. And if any creature had true sight, it was a dragon. Why does the monster not have true sight? I mean, seriously, if you're going to do a dragon, if any monster has true sight, it's the dragon, right? So why exclude the dragon having true sight? Are we only giving this to something else? Like, what else is there to give it to? So I'm going to just go to true sight. True sight. Let me describe true sight to you. A monster with true sight can, out to a specific range, see in normal and magical darkness. So dark vision is kind of pointless if you have true sight. Yep. Because dark vision doesn't deal with magical darkness, only normal darkness. Okay. It can see invisible creatures. Now this is one of the problems with dragons, right? Is you could never sneak up on a dragon with invisibility because they could see invisible creatures. 5e seems to have removed that. And objects, so creatures and objects, automatically detecting visual illusions. So illusions weren't going to work. Just like invisibility, illusions weren't going to work. And the original form of a shapeshifter. So if you changed shape, used magic, okay? So detect visual illusions and succeed on saving throws against them. Perceive the original form of a shape-shifting creature. This is one of the things is you couldn't change shape because the dragon has an inbuilt magical aspect to it that allowed it to know that you were using magic to change your form. Because this is what dragons do. They change their form, okay? Furthermore, the monster can see into the ethereal plane within the same range. So this is where the problem lies. I'm fine with it having blind sight if we want to have blind sight. Blind sight just basically means that, it doesn't need to worry about seeing the thing. It can use its smell. It can hear creatures, things like that. But dark vision and not true sight is a fundamentally and stupid thing to do. You do not want your players being able to sneak up on a dragon. It should not be something that is easy to do. So true sight, people, is where you want to be. Forget about this this lame dark vision nonsense, because it gets that with true sight. Now, as for blind sight, do we still need to keep it? That's the big question. So I'm going to just highlight that, and we'll see what people have to say. Languages. This thing has been around a long time. It's pretty smart, and yet it only knows 2 languages, and our player characters probably know 3. Heck, they've been alive so much less, and it only knows 2 languages. Are you serious? Now, you might be thinking, this is not a combat feature, Fred. We don't have to worry about that. Yeah. No, I think you do. I think you do. Hello, Osiris. How are you? Nice to have you. TPK to evil characters. There. True sight is nice. Well, it seems Bilbo will have to not... look, Bilbo was invisible, and the dragon still knew that that he was there. But then again, let's remember, Bilbo and the dragon and the Hobbit, that's not necessarily D&D. It's not also necessarily the lore behind dragons. That's just what Tolkien's doing with dragons. Okay? So let's keep going. There should be more languages here. What languages should there be, and how many should there be? Okay, I would suggest to you we should have at least 3 languages here. There should be at least 3 languages for a red dragon, not 2. Okay, it's not that dumb. Anyway, let's keep going down. Here we go, legendary resistance. Now, a lot of people are probably thinking, hang on, so this is one of the big problems I've found with my group multiple times, and more than one group, not just my home group. Legendary resistance. If the dragon fails the saving throw, it can choose to succeed instead. And you get to do that 3 times a day. Now, my players know this. If you've played the game long enough, you know that what you do is you try to find a spell that's not your best spell, but that the dragon doesn't want to take, and you burn through those legendary resistances. If you figure out, and this is what players do, they go the metagame way, and even if you give them 5 legendary resistances, it doesn't take into consideration how many spellcasters. Imagine you have a group of 5 players. There is a wizard and there is a cleric. That's 2 spellcasters that are probably going to force the dragon to make saving throws. Okay? If they feel like hitting the armor class is not going to be very easy. Honestly, I think they're probably going to go for the armor class rather than go for the saving throw. But saving throws are great because they can often do things like you can banish. Like banishment is not a particularly high level spell. A level 17 character could banish a dragon if you wanted to, and then just take its shit. And if you do it fast enough, and then just leave. I mean, that's literally what you could wind up doing. So, but there are other spells as well. So this is where our problem lies, is I'm going to suggest to you that it needs to be structured differently. 3 times a day is probably not going to work. Well, secretly. Have it know all languages. Okay, 4 to 6 languages at adult seems more reasonable. Osiris reckons all languages. What languages would interest a dragon? Creatures it commonly deals with. Yes, and so what creatures would that be? So we've got human, common. The common language makes sense, that's fine. What other creatures would it deal with? You think about that a little bit. I'm not going to come to that just yet. We'll deal with that shortly. So this is what we're going to do, is we're going to change how often you can use your legendary resistance to make that saving throw. Okay? Instead of once a day, once per round, means you can do it more than once. Remember, it's only going to live probably about 2 rounds, or it's going to have to flee by that point, or it will have won the fight, depending on how things go. Probably won't have won the fight, because it's never going to do enough damage. Not this monster anyway, not the way that it's written. Once per round, okay. That would be one way of doing it. It doesn't solve all our problems, unfortunately, because you'll find you're using your legendary resistance probably 3 times in the first round, or at least 2 of them in the first round, as the cleric and the wizard. And if you've got another spellcaster, that makes creates another problem. So once a round per spellcaster. Now that creates a different problem, because now you could potentially stop every spell that the spellcasters put through, and we don't want to do that. So I'm going to highlight this, but we've got to do something like that, but not exactly that. Okay, so we've got to figure out how we're going to do this, and we need to be able to adjust it for the size of your group. One of the things I was thinking about, like, I can build it so it can deal with a group of 4 or 5 characters who have 1 spellcaster or 2 spellcasters, but I can't build it to deal with a group who have 7 players and 3 or 4 spellcasters, or a group of 10 people. So we've still got to figure out how to make that work. So there's a problem there to deal with. 1 language per decade. Secretly. The dragon would have a personality and social circles that it speaks with. Yes. Yep, you guys are thinking about language right now, which is great. I'm glad to see it. Throw me some suggested languages for this dragon and I'll add them in. I'm fine with that. I'm going to tease you a little bit because I already have an idea of what to put in here. But anyway, let's keep going. Moving along. Flyby. Somebody has suggested we should include flyby. And this is primarily the problem with flyby, right, with your dragon. When you want to fly past the player characters and make an attack with either your bite or your claws or your tail, if somebody has, desires to make an attack of opportunity because they could, and they're within reach, because it does, if they have a reach weapon like a polearm, the only thing that's potentially going to keep it out of reach is the tail, right? Everything else, like the bite and the claw, the claws are going to keep it right in range. If somebody's got a polearm, they're going to be able to get it if it tries to make a bite attack and flies by. So you're really only flying by and making a tail attack. So there's a problem. We also have the sentinel feat, which is only supposed to be optional, but shit, everybody takes it in 5e. So I think flyby is probably a smart thing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just jump over here and I open this up, and I believe it's the owl. Is it the owl, the giant owl that has flyby? Because you should not be able to hit the dragon as it flies by and stop it. Okay, so let's go through here and let's take flyby. This dragon's moving really fast, and you're literally thinking that you're going to be able to just make a whack at it. Now, one of the great things about allowing it to have a be attacked and hit during a flyby attack, and get that attack of opportunity is melee characters aren't going to be left out. They will eventually, at least in the second round potentially, they're going to get an opportunity to do something else while you're waiting for the breath weapon to recharge. Okay, so let's put this in here. This means that the melee characters have to figure out how to fly, or they have to do a different type of attack. It's not going to work. So the red, is this right? The adult red dragon doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity when it flies out of an enemy's reach. I'd put that in. That's going to piss a lot of people off if they're a melee character. Okay? Going to piss off a lot of people. There is probably a way of structuring this. So I'm going to just highlight it, because I had thought about limiting it a little bit, but we'll come back to this. But something like this needs to be here. Otherwise, If you get rid of Sentinel, it's not a problem. Having them make an attack as they fly by, great, awesome, okay? But right now, it's kind of necessary just because of that silly feat. But Sentinel can still go through for opportunity attack. In what way? Deep speech, I see some undercommon. Okay, I see there's a couple of suggestions here. Legendary resistance. 75% of spells below level X have no effect on the dragon. So yeah, I there was another way of thinking about this. I had thought about it too. And that is thinking in terms of globe of invulnerability. Anything below level 3 and below, spell just doesn't work. But the players will just not use those spells once they know that's the case. So that's part of your problem. I suppose how much of that is going to really eliminate the spellcaster's effect on the dragon? Really? Probably not as much as we would like. What do you got here? 5e core. Strata with armor class 30. Undercommon. I think undercommon's a reasonable suggestion. Undercommon. I can see that. With a red dragon, undercommon would make sense. Absolutely. I'm going to put another question mark here. I'm looking at all the other suggestions. You've got here Draconic, Kobold. Kobolds speak Draconic anyway, so that's not an issue. All right. Now, I don't know why you think Sentinel will still go through. Am I looking at the wrong maths or game mechanics for a flyby on a dragon? Let's have a look here. Let's find Sentinel. Maybe I've read it wrong. To a large extent, the real problem is the actual feature itself. Sentinel. You have mastered techniques to take advantage of every drop in your enemy's guard, gaining the following benefits. When you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, the creature's speed becomes 0 for the rest of the turn. Well, that we need to eliminate because a medium-sized creature stopping a huge creature who's flying, utterly ridiculous. I know it's a feature there, but it's a terrible one. Creatures provoke opportunity attacks from you, even if they take the disengage action before leaving your reach. Well, we're not dealing with a disengage action here. That doesn't matter in this case. When a creature within 5 feet of you makes an attack against a target other than you, that target doesn't have this feat. Okay, that doesn't have this feat. You can use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against the attacking creature. That's the only time it's ever going to come up. I don't think we need to worry about that. Honestly, I think Sentinel is not going to be an issue. Okay, I'm going to grab a lozenger and we're going to start dealing with the next lot of stuff. We need to spend a bit of time on the legendary actions, and I've got an hour, which is great. Immune to Earthbind. So, Earthbind, is that an automatic spell? I don't remember it necessarily being an automatic spell. I know it can take a dragon down. I feel like that the Earthbind spell is more a product of the Earthbind spell is probably too good. It's like Counterspell and Shield. They're too good. They probably should not exist in the game. I can't fix all of those things. Yes, and we're going to come back to the grapple in a second, by the way. The dragon can use its frightful presence, then makes 3 attacks. 1 with its bite and 2 with its claws. Why is it not allowed to use its tail? Makes no sense. I don't understand why they do not include the tail. Okay, so let's just go 1 with its bite. Claw. Bite, claws. entail. Okay. Just include all of those. That spreads things out. Next, I think that's what I wanted to do here. Now we need to figure out our damage output for this creature. How much damage should it be doing with its basic attacks? And is its base attack actually high enough for a monster like this? So it says here, challenge rating 17. Its attack bonus should be a plus 10. Now there's a problem with a plus 10. Let's think about what would be the bonus that you have as a player character. Probably a character who is a ranged attacker or a melee attacker or even a spellcaster. You're going to have at least 5. You should have by now at least 5 in your main ability score. Okay, or 5 in your main ability modifier. Then you got your proficiency, which is 6. So you're looking at, more than likely, you're looking at somewhere in the vicinity of an 11. Now you could push that a little bit higher if you have certain features. You can push that higher by using feats or taking fighting proficiencies. Like most fighting proficiencies give you a +1. So most melee and ranged weapon attackers are going to have at least a 12 now. Okay, all right, that's 12. And we're looking at a 14, which is pretty good. It's pretty hard hitting. I would suggest to you that we don't necessarily have to have that number be as high as that to be effective. But you also got to take into consideration armor class for your player characters. And that's the tricky bit. So I would go here. Strength is an 8. So 8 there. And really what they've done is just gone strength there. If it had high dex, I'd go with the dex one as well. But so okay, so that's the reason why they've done that calculation with the strength modifier and the proficiency bonus, and they come out with a 14. So you wind up with a 14, which is significantly higher. The table shouldn't read 10. It should really sit in the vicinity of 11. But reality, because of how the game is set up, most of the time you can get at least a +1 from magic items. At level 17, players should have a magic item that gives them at least a +1. You might very well have a +3 as well. Level 17, level 18, this is where legendary magic items start to purvey their way into the game. Even if you've been holding off, that tends to be when they show up. So a +14 is actually not a bad idea because it takes into consideration 6 for your proficiency bonus, the 5 for your ability modifier, which is going to be the main one you use, that comes to 11, and then whatever magic item you have or special abilities, it adds another 3. You're probably going to have a legendary weapon at that point, or you should. And if you don't have that, you might even have a 15, not a 14, at level 17 to hit. So 14's fine for this in this case, simply because we needed to factor in magic items. You're going to have magic items by now. So 14 is fine. So leave that alone. You could even go as high as a 15. Now I know that sounds really broken and outside of that table. Like I said, the table's not very accurate. So you could go as high as a 15, but we'd have to change some of the numbers over here. We'd have to change the strength and push it up a little bit more if we wanted to do that. Okay. We wouldn't have to do very much. We could just go to a 28 and then that would be a 9 and that would be fine. Yep. That would be doable. We could push that up another 1 if we wanted to. In fact, we'll just do that. Let's go here a little bit harder. Going to hit a bit more often. And that's there. Make that 9. 9. Okay. So yeah, to hit with this dragon is actually pretty close to where it needed to be. It's not bad at all. Okay, next, moving along. We need to figure out damage output. And also DCs. I'm going to talk about DCs in a second, but let's deal with damage output. How much damage do we have to do per round based off this table to be effective against a level 17 character? To give you an idea, I had a fighter who was level 20 and they had 256 hit points. Or 260 something. It was a lot. They had a lot of hit points. Barbarians, it can be even worse with a barbarian. They can have a lot more hit points. There's a lot of things that go into it, so you've got to be really careful about that. So let's just move these numbers to a 15. Plus 5, yes. Yeah. So you're really needing to roll a 10. And possibly even higher to be able to hit. Yeah, that's true. I've seen tanks that have an armor class of 30, which is just crazy stuff. Alright, let's go and work out our damage output for this this creature. So right now, if we add up the damage that it does per round, and I'll do that now. So if it hits with its bite, it would do 19 points of damage, and then it would also do 7 points of fire damage, so plus 7. And then if it hits with the claw as well on its turn, okay, then it would do another 15 points of damage. And then if it manages to hit with the tail as well, okay, it's going to do 17 points of damage. So that's not the breath weapon, that's just making normal attacks since it gets 3, and of course it's got frightened. Each creature of the dragon's choice that is within 120 feet of the dragon and aware of it must succeed on a DC 19 wisdom saving throw or become frightened for 1 minute. A creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turn, ending the effect on itself on a success. If a creature saving throw is successful or the effect ends for it, the creature is immune to the dragon's frightful presence for 24 hours. Now, I'm fine with that. The DC is fine too, based off the table, but we're going to have another discussion about that because there's a few things to factor into this. What does Frighten do in the game? What huge benefit does Frightful Presence have? I'm not saying it should go, but what is the actual effect to our players? Because Frightful Presence should be affecting everybody in the party right now, correct? Provided they fail the saving throw. At level 17, what is your saving throw likely to be? Have a think about that. Wisdom. Even if you have a flat modifier of 0, and if you're not proficient, then it's going to be quite low. But if you have your proficiency, you get a 6, and then you're rolling a dice. So, and if you have a paladin, I mean, that changes things again. So, okay, all right. But what is actually happening with Frightful Presence and the frightened condition? Let's have a look at the frightened condition. Being frightened is not really a big deal, if you ask me. Frightened. A frightened creature has disadvantage on ability checks. Okay, fine, it's got a disadvantage on ability checks. And attack rolls. Now, that's important. That's only if they wind up frightened, though, okay? While the source of their fear is within line of sight. Now, provided you've got a big area, you should be able to do that. So that's good. That means that whatever they are rolling with their, they're probably rolling a plus 15 to their their dice roll, and they've got to hit an armor class of roughly 20. If they're rolling with disadvantage, I mean, disadvantage equates to, for an attack roll, -5. That means that on average, if you roll a 10 in that, you get 25 to hit. But if you're taking with disadvantage, hopefully you got disadvantage applied to that attack, we're bringing it down to hitting an armor class of about 20. So that most of the time, even with disadvantage, they're probably going to hit. They're probably still going to hit, even with disadvantage. So it hasn't done a lot. What else can it do? The creature can't willingly move closer to the source of its fear. That's really the only huge factor that's useful to us, particularly for melee characters. So there's not a lot going on here with regard to that. Okay? So it's not having a huge effect as far as I'm concerned in terms of their ability to hit the target. Even with disadvantage, it's not bad. They really, as long as they're rolling like a 5 or more, they're hitting the dragon. That's literally what's happening at level 17. That's all they need to do. Even with disadvantage, how often are you going to wind up rolling 2 5s? I rolled a 20, I rolled a 12. You're probably going to hit the dragon still. Okay, so that so the disadvantage to attack rolls is not a big deal. It's not having a huge effect. It's just it's stopping from people getting closer. That's the biggest part of it. Okay, what is the likely saving throw for your character and their best ability? Okay, their best saving throw. Since we're using this feature, and remember when you're doing anything with a monster, up against the monster, you're usually using your best ability. You're not using the scummiest stuff that you have. You're using the best stuff that you have. Grapple checks. I'm getting to it. Don't worry. I know you want to talk about grapple checks, people. So what I would suggest to you is you have 8, because the DC calculation is 8. Then you're adding 8 plus 6 for the proficiency bonus at level 17. Okay. So 8 and 6, that comes to 14. And then we're adding probably 5, your best ability modifier. So 14 and 5 is 19. So your DC for your creature is about in line with the players. It's about as good as theirs is. Now we could push that up one and it would still not be a big deal. I'm going to suggest to you that even at level 17, hitting a 19, okay, is not that hard. Most of the time you'll be fine. 20 and above tends to be the sweet range I found, even for a wisdom saving throw. We could go higher than a 19, we could go to a 20, and it still wouldn't have minimal effect. I would push it up just 1. Pushing it up 2 would be too much. We'll push it out of the challenge rating bracket that we've got. Just push it up 1. Most of the time, players will still save on a DC 20 for a wisdom saving throw. Most of the time, they'll still make that. Anyway, let's keep going. And it is a dragon, so it probably should be a little bit better. Now, how much damage did we do? We did 58 points of damage from a bite, a claw, and a tail on our round, and we did the frightful presence. Lovely. How much damage should we be doing with our monster, our dragon, at level 17? Well, the table says we should be doing 105 to 110 points of damage. That's a problem. We are nowhere near that. We are short by almost 50 hit points per round. That's provided we actually hit the target. There is no way we can leave our monster with that little in terms of output for damage on our player characters. Remember, they're level 17. They're going to have a lot of hit points. Okay, so I would suggest to you we need to bump this up a little bit. How do we bump this up? We do a bit of number crunching, and I'll grab this. So first off, the bite attack. We have 2d10, which comes to 20. If we max that out, we add 8. So we get an average. That's what our average is, about 5.5 for each of them. Comes out at about 11 plus that, so 19. So our average damage is calculated. Now, the table is for average damage in the Dungeon Master Guide. So 19, we really need to push it up a little bit more. So let's add in another d10. I think another d10 is probably the best way to go. Actually, we're also going to add in our damage from here, so we actually pushed it up to 9, so this is actually going to be a little bit higher. It should be 20. Okay, that's more like it. Okay, so that's where it is right now. So that's still not going to be enough. This one should be here, a 9. This should go to 16 now. This is 9. And this is 18. But even with that increase of 3 more, that's only getting us to 61. So it's not enough. So now we're going to push them up a bit higher. How do we do that? We add in another dice. So we add in another D10. So 3D10 comes to 16.5 plus 9. Rounding down. So we've got to go here to 16, 25. 25 hit points on that one. And this one here, 25 is probably still not going to be enough, even if we add that in. Even with the damage output from our fire, still not going to be enough. So we need to push in a bit more, because we only increased our damage output by 5.5, which is minuscule. So we'll put in another one here. That's 3. So that's 3.5. Multiply that by 3 equals 9. That's 10.5. 10.5. Okay. And then we add our 9. Should bring us up to a 10, 9, 19. That's more like a 19 now. Okay. We're going to push our damage output on our fire up a little bit as well. I'm going to have to draw it from everywhere. So that comes to 10. It'll be 10.5, but we'll just round down. And then for our tail, provided it hits, 3d8. Okay, so 3d8. So that is 4.5. Add that again. Comes to 9. Add it again. You get 13. 13 and 9. 22. So we've given we've added an extra dice to all of them. We've pushed our bonus that we add up a little bit. So our damage output has increased enough, a bit more. Is it enough though? I would suspect it's probably not going to be enough. I think we're still going to be well and truly out of that range. So 25 plus 9 plus 10 plus 19 plus 22. We're now at 85. We're still not high enough. Even with adding another dice to the damage output, we're literally going to have to double it. So we're going to have to do this again. Let's go with 4. Okay, so 4, 9's 18. 18 and 9 is going to come out to 18 and 9 is 27. 27 on that one. Let's push this again, a little bit higher. Okay, 4 6s, that's 7 twice, that's 14. 14 plus 9 comes out at a 14, 9, 23. There we go, that's 23. Let's push this up again. 4 10s, so that's 11, 11, 22, and then 9, it's 31. Okay, and we'll push up our damage here as well. So that is 7, 7, it'll be 14, I believe, correct? 14, not rounding down. 6.3, 7, yes, 14. Okay, so let's add up that again and see if we're closer to the number we needed to actually have. You see how much more damage this thing had to do to actually fit into line with that? Trust me, even this is going to be tame. Players are going to pump out significantly more than this. Plus 23. Plus 27 equals 95. We're still not even in that range that we were looking for. So we'll pick something to push up a little bit more. I'm going to suggest that if we spread it out a little bit more, we might get, would we get another 1, 2, if we leave the fire alone and we go with the other ones, 10, 5, 3, we might just push it up let's push it again. Let's make that 5. So that's 5 10s, 5 5s, 11, 6.5, 16.5, and 9. So 16.5 and 9 comes out at what? Did I get it right? No, I got it wrong, didn't I? It goes 5.5, 3 of them. It's 11, 22, 27.5, 27.5, and then another 3, 27.5, and then at 3, 36. There we go. 36. Sorry, people. Okay, so we need to add in another 3.5, roughly, for that one. So that comes out at 17. Let's push them all up a little bit more. Can you imagine rolling all these dice? It would be ridiculous, right? But this is essentially what we're looking at. So let's go, that's another 5, 6, 17, 9. So I've done something here. What have I done? What have I done? I've done a miscalculation somehow. 6, 7, 14, 17. That's correct. And then we go 9. So that comes out at 26. Okay, that's fine. Got that one. Push it up another one. It's a dragon. Let's see. Another 4, essentially. So that'd be 31, I think, roughly. Yep. Okay, let's see if this actually comes out close to the number we required off that chart. 31, if it hits, that is. 26. Fire, 17. And 36. 110. Finally, we got there. Now we're in the bracket, in the range that we should be sitting in for a dragon. Hello, Agile Monk. Hello, Big Kid. How are you? Add a cone or smoke or frighten. Dragons rules. CR. Hello. How are you, CR? Players fear your dragon. I'm sure they do. Okay, so I've done that bit. So we finally have our dragon pumping out enough damage from its multi-attack to be some sort of threat to our players, apparently, if that's correct. I can assure you I've seen a level 17 character who is a rogue in one turn do 100 or more points of damage. So this dragon's really only doing what a rogue could do right now. It's just spacing it out across multiple attacks. It won't be just one attack, it's got 3 attacks on its turn. That's if it doesn't have its recharge feature. Let's have a look at the recharge feature. So its recharge feature and its fire breath, it's sitting at a 20, and it's really, for a challenge rating 17, supposedly it actually should be a 19. I pushed it up to a 20. We've actually made it more difficult by doing this. I'm going to pull it down a little bit. I know you're thinking that's strange. Why are you making it less powerful? Isn't the idea of making it a challenge, this monster? I get what you're saying, but just drop it down. Remember, you still do damage even if you succeed with the thing. You know, it's 60 feet cone. It's going to put out that fire. Even if they save, they still take damage. How much damage are we actually doing? I want you to think in terms of multiple targets. How many can you reasonably get? I found with a 60 feet cone, about 3 player characters if they start to spread out a little bit. It's pretty hard to get, even with a 60-foot cone. A 90-foot cone is a bit better, but a 60-foot cone and you're flying around and you're trying to stay out of reach, you're probably only going to get 3 targets. So that means that would push out roughly, 63 points of damage. It's a lot of dice to roll. Let's get real. That's a lot of dice to roll. I'd push it up a little bit more. 63 points of damage against a wizard. It can do that. You can do that twice, and the wizard's still standing. Easy. Easy. And they're probably going to save some of these. They're not going to necessarily fail every single one. So I would suggest we can push the damage up a little bit. And if you're hitting 3 targets, you know, and they take full damage, then you're doing like 180 points of damage, which is quite a lot more. More likely they're going to do only half damage. So really you're looking more at 31 points of damage, another 31. So maybe 93 points of damage from your fire breath spread out. So your fire breath isn't necessarily doing anywhere near as well as just localized attacks with the tail, the bite, and the claw. But the good thing about it is if you do miss, you still do something. You know, even if you don't, they succeed, you're still putting out something. I'd push this up a little bit. Doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit. 20, and then that means that we're going to push this up by 3 more points. So that's 3. Is it 6, 7? I think it's 7. It is 7. So it'll be 70. Put it up to about 70. There's your damage output for that thing. Okay. That's a little bit done. Next, let's deal with legendary actions. This is where your monster is going to need to actually work. That was just the easy stuff. The legendary actions are where everything comes apart. Because your monster is only putting out as much damage as essentially the rogue or the hard-hitting melee or ranged. You know, if you've got a Gloomstalker Ranger, you're only doing as much damage as one of their attacks. So you have to have more attacks. That's why we have 3 legendary actions. 3 legendary actions is fine if you have a group of 3 people. 3 legendary actions, not so great if you have 4 or 5 people who are playing characters. If your group is bigger, you're even more fucked. I know this. I've done this so many times before. This here is a problem. The dragon can take 1 legendary action against I gotta make this so however many characters you have. If you have 5 characters, that's how many legendary actions you need to have. Okay, that's how many legendary actions you should be having. You shouldn't have less. I'm not looking at the chat that much, people, because I'm focusing on what I'm doing here. So the dragon can take 1 legendary action there we go. At the end of each player's turn. Forget about the creatures. We only care about the players. How many players are there? The dragon can take 1 legendary action at the end of each player's turn. So if you have 6 players, you get 6 legendary actions. If you have 4 players, you get 4 legendary actions. If you have 3 players, you'll have 3 legendary actions. If you have 10 players, you'll have 10 legendary actions. The dragon regains spent legendary actions at the start of its turn. Forget about this. You don't need that at all. That's all it is. That's it. That is the extent of the complexity of a legendary action. Okay, you do not need anything else. Now, standard actions here. Let's get rid of that. Okay. The dragon can take the following actions. And we add in dodge. Put in the dodge. If you find that your frightful presence did not scare them and they don't have disadvantage, now they do have disadvantage. Because as I said before, having disadvantage at level 17 for a character they're still going to hit the dragon. They're probably still going to hit him. So you want to have dodge. It should probably be the first thing you lead with, if you can, after you've, as soon as you get a chance to use a legendary action, use the dodge action. Dash. We need the dragon to be able to escape. What else what's the other one that I'm thinking of? Dash, grapple, shove, and I think there's a couple of others. We make our dragon harder to hit, move faster, but we're not finished. Can make a tail, a bite, claw, or tail attack. Why am I adding in so many different options? You're probably asking yourself. One of the worst things you can have is have access to a legendary action and you can do nothing with it. One, because you can't use the tail attack, or you can't use the detect ability because it wouldn't make any sense, and you've only got the wing attack and it still wouldn't make any sense. It's happened to me so many times with a dragon where there's nothing I can do with a legendary action on my turn. I'm waiting for the recharge to occur, and it should get a legendary action, but detecting and making a tail attack or the wing attack, it's out of range. It's still flying and coming round. So give it something else. This is why I'm putting these here, by the way, if you're wondering. So let's do that. And I'm going to put in a question mark because I think there's another one I'm supposed to add and I can't remember what it is. I want each opponent, so as a summoner is in trouble. 10 rounds a creature. So essentially what this means is, on your turn with your dragon, you're going to get to do 3 things: bite, claw, or tail. Bite, claw, and tail, and the frightened presence. But I don't think the frightened presence is much of a big deal. Okay, it certainly fits with a dragon. That's fine. Or you don't do those and you do your breath attack. Okay, if you want to scorch a few people, and firing them up with your breath weapon is what you want to do as much as you possibly can if you can get away with it. Detecting and using the wisdom perception check, it's basically just search. Why do we even have to have that? Can we not just replace it with something else? I always found it amusing that we have detect, make a perception check. Really? If we look in the player's handbook, the players get this. It's supposed to normally be a normal action to do this, right? But we can just port this across and just avoid a lot of complexity that didn't need to be there in the first place. So let's see if I can find that. Where is it? Saving throws, adventuring, combat. Since we're in combat now, here we go. Right, search. Okay, so we're going to put in the search action. Shove, search. So if you have to deal with a creature and you need to search, which you probably shouldn't have to because you have true sight, but if you want to search, you can use search. It's not a big deal. There's no point having disengage because you won't be able to incorporate your movement and disengage. Disengaging for a monster, not really hugely helpful. If you have monsters with you that you want to interact with, give them the help action. You're not going to lose anything from it, so you might as well put it in. Okay. Hiding. Is this monster really going to hide? Well, I suppose you could say, but I've always found that hiding in a battle is completely ridiculous, and for a red dragon, it's not what they do. Not in a battle. They're going to get up in your face and they're going to make you suffer. Okay, so forget about that. Dash, great. Dodge, great. And actually, I'm just going to move this around so it's a little bit. Cut. Paste. Paste. Come on. Paste. There we go. Dodge, grapple, search. If I got it all in the help, we'll move that in the help. Paste. Okay. The dragon can take the following actions. Get rid of this. This is a nonsense. Okay, base attack. We get our bite, claw, tail as an option. We get all these other things that we can potentially do. We get to choose what they are. And our wing attack. Our wing attack isn't that great. I mean, its DC is really high. I get it. I get it. Just bring it down to a 20. Okay, and my suggestion to you is it doesn't do a lot of damage. I don't know that there's any point fluffing around with it too much, but it's not even comparable. Why does it cost that much? It has a range of 10 feet. Each creature within 10 feet of the dragon. Literally, you'll have 2 people who are going to get hit by this. It's not a big deal. I would not consider this a 2 action economy thing going on here. This is shit. I don't have a problem with having the wing attack, fine, but 2 actions, nah, it's not. That's getting stupid now. So forget about that nonsense. Now this doesn't even do anywhere near as much damage as the other attacks we do. So let's just pump it up. Let's take it. So it's 2d6. Let's just look at our 6-sided dice we had here. So this is really what we're wanting. We want 26 points of damage and 5d6. Okay, if you're going to roll dice, which you really shouldn't be rolling dice with a monster like this. It's really stupid. Use average damage, okay? 26. 26. 26, 5d6, plus 9. There you go. There's your bludgeoning damage and your knock prone. Okay? Simple as that. It either works or it doesn't work. And the dragon can then fly up to half its fly speed. So you get to do it and fly. Would this be the thing you would always use? I know people will say, but then now you would only ever use the wing attack. No, you won't. Because it won't always be the most effective and useful tool to use. As your dragon is flying and maneuvering around, you're not going to be in the right place to use 10 feet. It just isn't going to happen that way. It's a single action. That's it. Now, where else was I looking here? I was looking for something. Hide is pointless. They would not do that. Ready, if you want a ready in action, I'm fine with you putting in a ready to action, but what action can you ready? There aren't too many. There'd be very niche situations where ready would come into play. Would it hurt? The only time you're going to need a ready to action, it doesn't make any sense. So don't put it in because you're already using reactions up the kaboo. Essentially, you have as many reactions as there are players at the table. So reaction and ready makes no sense. So forget about that. That will just screw with things a lot. It'll make things harder to do. Use an object. You could include use an object. I'm not against that idea. So let's go there. Use an object. Object. Okay. So we've included pretty much all of the standard actions that are absolutely necessary. I know one thing you're thinking is, Fred, where's the spell casting? I know you're saying it. How much spell casting should a red dragon have? Really, think about it. How much spell casting should a red dragon have? I think it's not the dragon's spell casting that is the thing that we need to consider. I think what you want to consider with a red dragon, because it's not like every other dragon, is how resistant to magic should it be? Somebody was talking about low-level spells, and certain level spells should just not have any effect, or have a 75% chance of having an effect. Yeah, I'm a hater on the dice rolls. Well, I do roll dice, dude. I do. But I use average damage and I roll a 6-sided dice. My players are tough. They can take it. You could roll a 4-sided dice. You're only adding another 1, 2, 3, or 4 points of damage to it. It's not going to break your game, really. You know, it's not gonna hurt your players that much. It really isn't. Anyway, let's have a look. So we've got our legendary actions. It's nice and simple. We've got lots of options. We've got our base attack. We've got our wing attack. Okay. We're going to go back up here. This is mostly fine. I don't have a problem with a recharge feature with 5 or 6. There's a chance it may never recharge. Our monster is probably only going to live between 1.5 and 2 rounds. But what it does mean is if you have a group of 5 players, you're going to have time to probably have your turn at least twice. So maybe one breath weapon and then the other attacks. And on top of that, you get to do a whole lot of things on each of their turns. So that means you get 2 turns. Your dragon will also get, if you have 5 players, potentially another 10 things it can do. That means that it's always dynamic. You might think that this is too much. Trust me, it's not. They will still be perfectly fine. This has made it interesting for my players, but it certainly hasn't made the game broken. Okay. So legendary resistance. Once around, okay, here we go. So here's the next problem to deal with. And I've been talking about this a lot, and that is how resistant to stuff should they be? Hello, Steve C. How are you? I know I'm not looking at the chat much, people. You keep talking, and maybe I'll go back and have a look at it later on. But here's the problem. We don't want all magic to be effective against this creature. This dragon should not be getting hit with every single spell and having some sort of effect against it. Legendary resistance is really about its ability to resist a lot of magical stuff. Right now what we've got here is going to just stop every single spell the spellcasters put out. So that's not going to be a workaround. So we're going to go back a little bit and we're going to hit once per round. Once per round. So if you wind up with your fight going and extending on a little bit longer, fight once per round. There. If we look at a wizard or a sorcerer or a cleric, how many spells do they have available to them? Because when you face a dragon, you're going to use every spell you have and you're going to light it up. Okay? So let's have a look at how many spells they have to think about this. What do you got here? Consume victim. Dear. So level 17 is where you'll probably at least be doing this. And so at level 17, you have access to 9th level spells. It's a 9th level spell. You can cast Wish. Meteor Storm. Seriously, Meteor Swarm. That's a big deal, right? Yeah? Okay. So that's bad news for a dragon. Meteor Swarm. You're going to get 8th level spells. You're going to get one of them. You're going to get a 7th level spell. You're going to get a 6th level spell. Oh, wow. We keep going on. We're going to get 2 5 level spells. We're going to get 3 4th level spells. And then we get into 3rd, 2nd, and 1st level spells and cantrips. So how many spells does a spellcaster have that they can level at a dragon in their rounds? If you only have 2 rounds or 3 rounds that you want to fight it out, how many big badass spells are they actually going to be able to unload? They can unload 1 9th level spell, an 8th level spell, a 7th level spell, a 6th level spell, 2 count it, 5th level spells. We're on to 6 spells now. A 4th level spell. Okay, that's pretty good. Wonderful. Okay, there's 3 of them. So 9 spells that they can unload on this dragon, who's probably going to live 2 rounds. Do you know how the Tarask has this feature where there are certain spells that don't affect it? Probably one of the smartest things you can do is have something like that. I would port over something like that so you don't have to contend with that quite so much. So let me just do this here. For those of you who are saying, Fred, why aren't you covering the Lich? Because we really wanted the Lich. The Dragon one. We're doing the Dragon, not the Lich. I'm doing the Lich in 2 days. I'm ditching my podcast and I'll go through the Lich. The Lich is a fucking nightmare, but I'll do it. Okay. So here's what I would suggest to you. is we take the Tarrasque, and you're considering how many spells you're likely to have at level 17, you can probably get away with pumping an ability like that in there so that they can't just use everything. Mr. T, is it there? Tarrasque? I just want to... What's an easy way to balm search? Just it's a 30th level monster, isn't it? Give me that one. 30. How many are there? There we go. There it is. So this is not a 30th level challenge rating monster that we're dealing with here. Okay. Reflective Carpus. This is way too complicated. No way do we want anything like that. We want something super simple. Okay. Magic resistance. The Tarrasque has advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. I have never understood why we don't have magic resistance for our dragons. We could eliminate your spell casting, or we could just use magic resistance and just drop that in. And that means you get advantage on your dice rolls, which will make it a lot easier to succeed. So if you do fail it, you still got a better chance. So this is the easy fix as far as I'm concerned. We just take this. And we'll put this underneath. Once per round, you can just succeed if you need to. And if you... oops. That's fine. Let's just unhighlight that bit. And just put this in here. This is bold. The dragon has advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. I don't really consider a red dragon necessarily, an adult red dragon is necessarily a spellcaster as such. But I would say to you, you can definitely include magic resistance. I don't know why it's been left off the stat block. I don't understand it all. So include that. That's what I would put in there. Okay. All right. So let's have a look at a rundown quickly of our monster and what we've got, and then I'm going to go to work. Now this is, I wouldn't say that this is the end. You can do other things. You can actually add in spells. You can give the monster spells, but there's no point me putting in spells if you can't deal with all of the maths and all of the extra information. There's a reason why I've left them out. If you can't remember those spells, why give your dragon spell casting if you could never track it? Just make it simple. It does a lot more than it did before. It will still be effective, and it will still be able to deal with the magic that's being leveled at it, and it'll be able to deal with those people who try to sort of lock it down. Anyway, let's do this. Let's have a look. Remastering the adult red dragon. Here is my remastered stat block. Okay. The armor class, we pushed it up. Instead of 19, it's now 20. Instead of going with average hit points, we're going to 361. Maximum. That should give us roughly 1.5 to 2 rounds of fighting before the battle is over, which is a good length of time. That's fine. 3 rounds would be great, but sometimes that can be boring. Okay. Speed. It didn't change anything with the speeds. It's all exactly the same. As for the ability scores and modifiers, we changed the wisdom. We pumped it up a little bit to a 15. It's now got a +5 modifier for wisdom. Okay. Its strength was a 27. I made it a 28 and gave it a +9 modifier for strength. We had to make some adjustments to the saving throws for this adjustment with the wisdom. So that's been done. Its perception and stealth, pretty much the same for stealth, but the perception went up from a 13 to a 14. We kept the fire immunity, fine with that. Its senses, we'll keep the blind sight 60 feet, but really what's important with this monster is true sight 120 feet. That's the main thing a dragon should definitely have. No nonsense around dark vision or anything like that. True sight 120 feet. Can see invisible creatures, can see illusions, can see that you changed form. You're not tricking this monster that easily. Dragons are hard to get past. Passive perception, not a 23, now it's a 24. We've given it undercommon, common, and draconic was already there. I've got question marks because I'll put something in there later on, but I want to talk to AJ Pickett about that first. The challenge rating, we left that alone because we wanted to stay in that bracket. The legendary resistance, instead of 3 or 5 or anything like that, you just get to do that once per round, okay? Guaranteed, you save on something you failed if you do a saving throw. You also get, and it should have been there in the first place, magic resistance. You get advantage. You roll 2 dice every time you make a saving throw. Gives you potentially a +5 to your roll, okay? Mathematically, it's like that. Flyby. You can now fly by the melee characters who are trying to attack and not need to worry about attacks of opportunity, which means you can't really be locked down by Sentinel, because you shouldn't be. It's a huge creature, medium-sized creature. There's no way Sentinel should be working that way. And the only reason for the flyby really is Sentinel. Otherwise, it really wouldn't matter as far as I'm concerned. Moving on, multi-attack. You get your frightful presence. You get 3 attacks. You can make one with a bite, one with a claw, one with a tail. The ranges, look, 2 hit, 14, +14 to hit is good, but make it a 15 because, frankly, most of your players are going to have a 15 at level 17 anyway. Okay? With all the magic items and all the other things they can add with their character building stuff, they're going to have at least a 14, 15 anyway. So give the monster a 15. Didn't change the ranges for all the attacks, that's fine. We literally more than doubled the amount of damage each of these attacks do because you had to. It was doing half the amount of damage it needed to do with the bite, the claw, and the tail. So we've bumped that all up. Frightful presence. I changed the DC for it, okay? I think I pushed the DC up by 1 to a 20 from a 19. Other than that, everything else is fine. It's not going to have a huge effect. The only thing that's beneficial really is, and it's not really the disadvantage to attack rolls or ability checks, the benefit for Frightful Presence is it fits with the monster, narratively, but also the other thing that's really useful about it is it stops them from being able to get closer, particularly when you're dealing with the close quarter martial characters, because they're going to cause a lot of trouble for a dragon. Okay? I can't solve your problems with your tactics, people. You've got to do this. You've got to do it. You've got to use your head. Now, with your fire breath, the DC was higher than it is now. I've dropped it down a little bit. Okay? That's not a problem because you're still going to do damage even if they save. But I've increased the damage. Okay? It's now 20d6 or 70. Okay? You're probably going to get roughly in a 60-foot cone about 2 or 3 people in that blast. Probably 3 if you do it right. And they haven't scattered too quickly. Okay? Legendary actions. Keep it simple. This is your bread and butter. This is once you've used your dragon breath and you're waiting for it to recharge, this is where you start needing options to do stuff. So your legendary action. The dragon takes 1 legendary action at the end of each player's turn. There's none of you get 3 or 4 or 5 or any nonsense like that. Or I know some people have gone with, if you have 5 players, -1. No. Or 7 players, -1. Don't worry about that. After every player's turn, the dragon does something. It's always interesting that way. Your characters will not die that quickly. Trust me. Not at level 17. Standard actions. These are the things you can do. You can dash, move further. You can dodge. You can avoid those people who didn't get affected by the frightened thing. Now you can use dodge so you don't need to worry about a standard roll for those attacks. They're going to have disadvantage against you now. Grapple. You can grapple a creature if you want to. You can use the help action. You can use the search action. You can shove. You can use an object if you've already used up an interaction. You can use your basic attacks, not just the tail, but now you're going to get the bite and the claw as well. Whichever tool is most useful and makes the most sense at the time. Your wing attack does not cost 2 legendary actions, just 1. It will not always be used. It gives you the benefit. I've actually adjusted the DC for the dexterity saving throw, so it's dropped down to a 2, I believe. We've increased the damage output by quite a bit, and more like 26 points of damage rather than the piddly thing we had before. And you can fly half your speed, and you can knock them prone. Look, being within 10 feet will probably only affect 2 of your players, if you're lucky. If you're lucky. More than likely, they will have spread out a lot more than that because they know it's a dragon. So you're probably only going to be able to hit one character. So it's not like the wing attack is going to be the most useful tool all the time. It'll be useful against martial characters where you need to hit them with something and then move away. That's the benefit. So you can get out of range. That is how I would go about doing anything with the adult red dragon. Now, legendary actions, I have no problems with the legendary actions. They're all fine. Just leave them how they are. Okay, things like the regional effects, leave them. Make sure you use that stuff, but I wouldn't worry about changing all of that stuff. I don't think it's that necessary. That's my advice. That's how I would rebuild the adult red dragon for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Okay. All right. I'm going to have to get out of here, so I'm out of time. So let's finish this poll. I haven't been tracking your tracking everything. Okay, I haven't been tracking everything in the chat. Yeah, flying 40 feet's good. It gets you out of range. Okay. I don't have time to look through the chat. I knew I wouldn't have time to. I'm going to take a break tomorrow. I'm not going to come and do some live streaming. I'll come back in 2 days and I'll do the same thing with the Lich, but I'll have 2 hours to deal with the Lich. And it will be hopefully useful to you. The Lich is a prick. I tell you, it's hard to deal with. No, legendary actions can provoke attacks of opportunity depending on the situation. It depends if you're using flyby. Yeah. Hello, how's it going, Murray Shack? How are you? Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I should be going to work, and it's going to be a rough one. So my suggestion to you is go have some fun. Seriously, try a dragon like this. It'll work for you. I'll put it up onto Patreon. Okay, you guys can go and get it. It's part of the SRD and Creative Commons, which is why I selected it. So I don't have to worry too much about stuff. My suggestion to you, though, is make some changes to stuff. Stop using the monsters in the monster manual the way that they've been built. It doesn't work. You have to do major alterations for it to be fun over time. So thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. Thank you to all of my patrons. Thank you to everybody who took part in the poll. I see that 75% believe that the adult red dragon stat block needed fixing, which is interesting. Good to know. Out of 20 votes. Thank you to everybody in chat. I'm not going to be able to call you all out because I really need to go. But really, great time. I hope this was useful to you. And till next time, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, okay, or the evening, look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.